stories. I'm Michael Miller, bringing people together and sharing the voices, events, and connections that shape our community.
Cheers,
Cheers.
guys.
That'd be true.
I'm all in to be the Miami-Dade County Mayor.
You got events? Tell everybody about it.
What's next? What do we have to do?
Thank you for joining us. This is live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Special guest today is Jude Bruno. You're the president-elect of the Florida PTA. Congratulations on that position.
Thank you.
When do you step in?
Well, I'll be stepping in come July at our 2026 Leadership Convention. But right now we're focusing on getting ready for session and supporting Maxine, our current president.
So it's really a prestigious position to be in the state of Florida. We've got 22 million people throughout the state. We got a lot of kids in school.
Yes, we do.
A lot. And certainly in the last couple of years, the school systems, plural, meaning all the different types of schools, have been undergoing this huge change. Mm-hmm. So what role does the Florida PTA have in that?
Well, we have close to over 1,400 local units across the state of Florida in our schools, making sure that we advocate on issues that affect children and the welfare of our youth. And our job is to advocate for public education and their well-being. So with public education ever changing, we're always making sure that we align our position statements to make sure that we get and demand the best quality service for our children.
So one of the things that we see that's happening in throughout Miami-Dade County, maybe it's other counties, is that a lot of the schools that used to be full, public schools, are now hugely empty. Mm-hmm. And there's a local school that used to have 1,200 kids, and now it's 700. Mm-hmm. So does that mean when you walk down the hallways, and you're in 11th to 12th grade, there's closed classrooms? Is that how it works, or do they take the kids and they spread them throughout the school?
Well, I think every school is different, so they may have address that issue a multitude of ways. It may not necessarily be empty classrooms, but certain segments of the building may be empty, and that they're aligning the kids as close as safely as possible by grade level configuration or programs. But just because our schools are low enrolled, it doesn't mean those classrooms aren't being utilized, because they may be pulled out for intervention, and you just happen to have a much bigger space. You may have a community coming in to provide services, and they now have a much bigger space to be able to provide those services. But while our schools are under enrolled, these classrooms are not empty because they're being used for programming.
So we saw that with the libraries. Before
Yes.
it'd be a place you just go for libraries, but now, for books. Now there's community meetings there all the time.
Exactly.
And including for those that don't have internet, some of them have Wi-Fi's in the parking lot
Yes.
where you can go park your car there. And so we understand, again, lots of changes that are going on, and it'll all get right-sided at some point.
Absolutely.
So I understand the motto is every child, one voice. Tell us about that concept.
Well, our job is to make sure that we are filling in the gap. When we advocate for one child, we are advocating for all children with one unified voice as an association. PTA, we have a national organization, the National Parent Teacher Association, and we have our state association, which I happen to work with. Then we have our regions and our councils, which coordinates the field ground. So we are part of a large group, to make sure that we are advocating across the country, whether we are in Georgia, California, New York. We make sure we have that unified voice to make sure we get what is best for our children in our nation's schools.
So, Jude, this is a volunteer position.
Yes, it is.
What drove you in the first time to serve like this?
Honestly, I got involved in PTA because I wanted to sell the most world's finest chocolates. And that's where the passion started, and them changing the concept that the fundraising is a means for us to expand our advocacy voice and making sure. And I wanted to make sure I had a seat at the table. I wanted to make sure that my voice as a student at Hubert O'Sibley Elementary at the time had a seat at the table, whether it was with the ESAC, the School's Advisory Council. I wanted to make sure that I represented my peers, and it was through PTA that I was able to be successful to represent them, and that has matriculated to where I'm slated to become their incoming president in just a couple of months.
Tell us how you got appointed or elected to that position.
It is elected. It was a nomination process and running from the floor, and ultimately the delegates at our convention 2 years ago, they made the decision in which I had the opportunity to be elected to serve as the president-elect and the incoming president.
That's a big deal.
It is.
Right? So what does your family think that you have this big volunteer position?
I'm crazy.
Besides, you should go get another job and make more
This is
money so
true.
you can afford to volunteer.
No, they think I'm crazy, but I think at this point it's a family affair, and that I'm able to show my daughter how it is she can make sure her voice is heard, and giving her a platform to understand that it is not just us making what is best for her in the education system or in life in general, that it is truly a collective, a community that wants to make sure that she is successful and is that of her peers. She definitely enjoys the trips to Orlando, because while we are attending our convention and business and meeting on issues, she gets to enjoy the pool, but I do drag her in into some of the workshops as well.
And how old is she?
She is 12.
It's important for our children to see what their parents and their family
Yes.
does, so they can look down the road and say, gee, that's pretty interesting. to do
I
that.
I hope. So far it's been successful, but you know.
So, Jude, what are some of the challenges that families are facing concerning education and the public school system?
Wow. Well, as we started, education is ever changing, and there's a lot of uncertainty, whether it's school funding, whether it's making sure that they actually can live to educate their children in the community that they want to be in. We also have the challenges of, immigration enforcement in our community that has impacted our district's enrollment very significantly, as noted this year. So there's many challenges. We know property tax is a concern, inflation is a concern, job security is a concern, but the number one issue for many is affordability, affordable housing, making sure that they have those resources, and of course, making sure that their children have their resources. So I can't say it's one concern. It is a multitude of concern that is just more pronounced as we continue to go about life right now.
With the students that you become familiar with, where's food insecurity involved with that?
Well, food insecurity is a concern. We know that the federal government is still shut down. As of this morning, they are still shut down. And we know SNAP benefits, there's still some confusion as to whether it will be fully paid with the contingency funds, partially paid, or not paid at all. We're about to go into Thanksgiving. These are programs that our families, many of our families do rely on, particularly here in the state of Florida. So it is not lost on us that many of our PTAs have begun ramping up their pantry efforts, marketing other pantry and food drives in the communities for them to be able to, inform their kids and their families to be able to partake in. So food insecurity is a concern, and we know that there are many organizations in our community that are stepping up to the occasion.
And speaking of security and insecurity, one of the things we all want is for our children to feel comfortable and protected while they're in the school system, meaning on the way to school, while they're there, and on the way home. What can the Florida PTA do to help with that?
Well, we can make sure that if there's an issue or concern, let us know so that we can make sure we include that as part of our legislative agenda for this upcoming legislative session that's starting in January, or for us to be able to take those issues to the school board or to either the county commission or the city commission, whichever is a responsible governmental entity, to make sure that we're addressing those issues. It's important that people speak up, and you had mentioned one of the one things that we can do is that we need families in our schools. We need them to be showing up, not just at the drop-off, but at the open houses, at the parent conferences, at any school events, because we really have to address some of these myths that our schools are failing. Our schools are not failing. Our schools are thriving. Our schools are exceeding and compete against any other choice option in this state, and we want our parents to see that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that the parents have to be involved in that. Not only is it good for them, it's great for the kids,
Yes.
all right? And it's great for the kids' classmates. They say, look, their mom or their dad or both of them are involved in that, and that means they care. And mom and dad, you need to show up because the other mom and dads are there as well. So how can you inform the parents, please get more involved in what they're currently doing? How do we do that?
Well, they can join the PTA, but after they can show up, whether it's showing up at the school's ESAC, whether it's attending any community meeting happening at the school. And I get it. We do have families and where we have the primary breadwinner is working 2 or 3 or 4 jobs in the household between those that live in the house. So it is difficult for some families. But there are many ways of getting involved, whether it's attending a virtual meeting where you can get information on how to best help your child at home or how to help the children in your household and the community. There are ways to get involved, but even if it's the uncle, the grandmother, the aunt, the godmother, or even a mentor in that child's life, when we say family, we are not talking about the traditional sense of family. We're talking about the community, really, because it does take a village coming into our schools to lend that helping hand and make that impression.
Let's talk about autism and similar disorders. depending on which figure, it's somewhere between 7 and 30% of each of the kids that are in school have some connection to being on the spectrum, and it's a pretty wide spectrum. What can the school systems and the Florida PTA do to assist these kids, including in early diagnosis and making sure that the parents are involved so they can get the kids tested and see what else the school system can do?
Well, I can talk from personal experience because my 5-year-old is on the spectrum in kindergarten right now. And I can tell you how the school system helped with the transition was making sure that we did a diagnostic. We knew that Jackson was on the spectrum from when he was born, but he is certainly defying all the expectations and reaching those milestones at his own time. And with Miami-Dade County Public Schools, making sure that we got the best IEP done for him to make sure he is getting that speech, that occupational, all the beltway. But I think the overarching issue goes down to funding. The school district is doing all that they can, but always more funding is needed to make sure we're providing those services, even at a national level with the IDEA. It's a great idea. But we all know it was never fully funded to where it should be. So it is where our state does have to come in and to offer those additional fundings so that we're able to provide those one-to-ones for those children who needs a one-to-one para, so that we're able to provide those additional services and to able to provide them at an even increased cadence for our students. I think all in all, we have to start identifying where the gaps are and getting those fundings from those gaps, and those starts with talking with our legislators.
Are there some parents that are hesitant to have their children tested, not just because of the money end, but because of, no, not my child. They can't be anything wrong, all right? And they can't be anything different. So tell us about that.
I'm sure there is. With anything in life, there is always a certain level of stigma that we try to overcome or don't want to be a part of. But I have to tell you, an early diagnosis is what's going to help any child who may be on the spectrum get the services that they need. That may be why their grades are a certain way, because they're not getting the appropriate accommodations. And accommodations can really only be afforded if we're having those conversations with the child's teachers, the LEA at the school site, and of course with the parent being involved at the table. You know, it may go down to your child needing additional time or those are services. It goes down to early diagnosis.
Yes.
You can't address what you don't know, and sometimes the knowing is what's going to make the best outcome for any child.
Including maybe the child needs glasses or a hearing aid.
Or hearing aid.
Or he's got some dental issue that's really there. And the parents should somehow find support in the school system or with their friends, say, listen, Johnny's got this problem. I need some help. Mm-hmm. So if somebody needs some help and guidance, what do they do?
Well, if they need to contact the district's ESC service centers. There's, at least in Miami-Dade County, there's 1 in 3 areas, whether the north, the central, or the south, and contacting those service centers so that they can get you in touch with a staffing specialist. But really, start at the school site. Contact that principal, contact that ESC chairperson at that school site to be able to have that conversation so that you are able to get the best accommodations for your child. They'll bring in the support in to have the meeting, to have the conversation, and to make sure we do what is necessary. At the end of the day, it is a federal and state right for these accommodations to be provided. But you can only achieve them if you're actually advocating for your child. And that is where we at PTA we're doing more of educating our parents. Just recently, through our education committee with Charmaine, we did a great job in hosting an ESC where we get an update as to how ESC rights are still being maintained. ESC rights are being maintained even in the midst of this government shutdown.
So it's not just a right; it's an obligation.
Yes.
A
Legal obligation.
Yes. And so some parents may not know that. Then they can start with their principal.
They can start with their child's principal. Yes.
And let's talk if a parent wants to be more involved. I know you said maybe they can call the PTA, but what are some of the things that the parent could do? If I want to be more involved in this wonderful system. My child's in 2nd grade. It's going to be at that school for another 3 or 4 years. Right? The first is 1st through 5th.
Well, many configurations may go to K to 5 or pre-K all the way to 8th.
So they can get involved. What are some of the things that they could do?
Well, again, they can join the PTA. I'm going to keep saying it because we have many programs and offerings at our schools through that school's PTA. But if not, certainly sign up to be a volunteer so they can be part of that school's
So each school has its own PTA?
Yeah, majority of the schools here in Dade County does have a PTA.
And there are a lot of kids in school down here.
There are a lot of kids in school, yes.
A lot, all over. So how often do you hear from parents, listen, the traffic is just so terrible and the buses are late and I can't get Johnny to wherever it is on time? What's that conversation like?
That conversation goes down to funding and the fact that there is a bus driver shortage in this country in terms of being able to drive our school buses or any buses for that matter. So as it relates to school buses, that is what's contributing to that problem. It's the buses being picked up late because you have one bus driver now having to come back to pick up a different route that ordinarily would have been picked up by someone else, and they might have called out or they may no longer work and they haven't been able to backfill that position. But it comes down to funding to making sure that these positions have wages that folks can actually live on so that they can continue so that they don't impact our children. But as it relates to traffic, this is Miami. As long as there's lights and there's a sunshine state, there's going to be some traffic, but at least for our children, it's definitely a shortage that needs to be addressed.
Sometimes when we speak to the county transportation people, they make reference to mobility. It's just, how are you going to get around? And I was downtown recently on Biscayne. I was having breakfast out there. They had the little scooters. They had the skates. They had the little motorcycles. People walking, people running. So there are all types of ways to get around. But if you're going to move downtown, you know exactly what you're going to get. And if you live in the suburbs, you know it's going to take you an hour to get home.
It is.
And you want to be closer to work. Move closer to work or leave an hour early.
It is. It's always a mission. What is that sweet spot? Either do I get on I-95 or 826, take the Palmetto? What is that sweet spot at that moment?
So do you remember a real success story of a local PTA that really made a difference in the community, or whether it was that school or in that child's life?
I think that's all of our PTAs. Every single one of our PTAs, whether you're on the beach, you're in Doral, or you're in the city, Liberty City, or even in Kendall, all of our PTAs are doing what they absolutely can to make the best for the student population that they serve. Because, as you mentioned, it's a volunteer job, so we're always trying to bring our best selves forward. But our job is always to make sure we have an impression on that campus that is best for a child. It may not be my child today, but it certainly was their peers.
We know it takes a village.
It does.
Because the times that parents are not involved, somebody else's parents are there.
Yes.
Supporting that. And nothing's greater than to go and you find one of your neighbors that's sitting there volunteering. Let's talk about your personal journey. Where did you go to school? What did you study? And why serve in this capacity?
Well, I'm born and raised here in Miami. Started out, ironically, at St. Mary's Cathedral in Little Haiti because I was close to the family shop. Then transitioned to Hubert O'Sibley, then in elementary. I was there from 2nd through 6th grade. At that time, 6th grade was still at Sibley. And then I went to David Lawrence Jr. K-8 Center for middle school for 7th and 8th. And fortunately, got an opportunity to be part of the first graduating class at Law Enforcement Officers Memorial High School back downtown. So I know downtown mobility very well. And that's been the journey. Have been involved in PTA ever since throughout all of that process, whether with the Miami-Dade County Council of PTA, PTSA. Had a great opportunity to serve at the national level as a national board member, advocating with PTA in DC and making sure that we had all the voices perspective there. But honestly, I am just as Miami as you can be. I know where to get the best cortadito or the best grill.
Wow.
To make sure that we fill those substantive needs. But honestly, my hope and dream is that Miami is what we want it to be, and us working together to make sure that our public school system is thriving. There's this perception that our public school system is failing or is under-enrolled for other issues beyond the control of a school district. There's always going to be mobility. Folks are going to come in and out of this state. And right now, the birth rates for the entire country is not what they used to be. So we have to, my job as the incoming leader with Florida PTA is to really be the biggest advocate for public education. And I can tell you, no one can do it better than our public schools. I'm a product of the public school system. I support the public school system. My 2 children are in the public school system. And it's not to say that PTA is against choice. We are for choice, but not at the imposition of the one system that has to take everyone, regardless of their circumstances, needs, socioeconomic status.
Seems a little unfair.
It is a little unfair. And we have lots of things that we're concerned about, whether it's the co-location of charter schools that was pushed in towards the end of last session. That is a big concern for us as an organization and what that rollout will be. we talk about the school system needing funding, but yet here's a mechanism that unfortunately has no guardrails to be able to support its own self. And for me as a taxpayer, for me in PTA, which by the way, one of our cardinal rules in our documents is for fiscal responsibility. We're now having essentially two school systems potentially could be created in our communities. And not just here in Miami-Dade, across the state, you could essentially have taxpayers paying for two separate school systems utilizing the same resources. And that, I don't know, is the best when it comes to fiscal responsibility. And that's what we're very concerned about.
So you and your team takes over in a couple months?
Yep.
So let's look down the road a year and a half. What do you hope that happens?
What I hope that happens is that we're still hitting the pavement. We're going to be moving into an area where we're going to be organizing a little bit differently, in the sense that we need to hit the streets. We need to start knocking on some doors as a PTA and start telling folks that we need you at the table and we need you at the schools. Because as education is changing, we cannot rely that our schoolhouses are the only places in where our advocates are. Our advocates are in the community, and it's time we engage them a little differently. We need to evolve in that sense, and that's what I'm looking forward to come July to start rolling out with a great team that will be elected at our upcoming convention.
When you were a little boy, did you say, I want to go do that? Or when did it dawn on you that you wanted to do this?
Honestly, it only hit me maybe a couple years ago after serving as treasurer for Florida PTA. Was my last position before becoming president-elect. When I was a little boy, I think most folks, I said I wanted to be president of the United States. It's still on the goal, but I'll settle for being. It's close.
So here we are. We have a new year that's coming up.
Yes.
And when is your inauguration, if you will, or the swearing in?
The installation will be on July 12th.
Right around the corner.
Right around the corner, yes.
Who's going to be there for you?
Well, we'll have the family. We'll be at our annual convention at the Omni Resort at Champions Gates. Folks are welcome to come. You're welcome to come on in. We're going to have a great workshops, a great convention. We had our last convention. It actually brought us back to our pre-pandemic numbers, close to 2,000 some odd folks there, advocating and learning about different ways to advocate as we were adopting position statements and resolutions. And one critical one we adopted this past convention was on property tax, making sure that we advocate this upcoming session for a property tax plan that does not impact schools or the essential services that our children rely on.
We have a young lady who's produces shows. Her name is Rachel. Mm-hmm. Rachel teaches second, third, and fourth graders in Florida City. Mm-hmm. And when she gets done there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, she drives all the way up here. Mm-hmm. And when she gets done, she drives almost all the way back because she lives in the Palmetto Bay area. And when I introduce her to people, we see how proud, not that she just is, mm-hmm. but the people are thankful that we have teachers like her that are willing to teach, that also go do something else so she continue doing more of the things that she wants to do. We certainly hold teachers in high regard, but we haven't yet compensated them similarly. What can we do besides just more money? What kind of pressure can we put to the lawmakers?
Well, there is money. There's actually $400 million that was of it and put into our massive state voucher program. And imagine what that money can do to the salaries of not just teachers, but all of our school support personnel in our buildings who are making sure that our students are successful. Because as you know, it takes a village, and every one of those school group employees help in that effort. So there is money there. The question is, how do we prioritize choice and ensuring that education is fully funded? And I don't have all the solutions, but I do know there are some sensible things that we can do, which is allocating some of those monies to the FEFP to make sure it can go into the salaries of all of our groups, making sure that we have all the resources there, right there. Because right now, the $400 million that they have allocated for the voucher program is unprecedented. It's something that we can start at and making sure that we meet the needs of all parents, but not handicapping the one system that has to take all children.
When we think about that, you have these private schools or the charter schools, and you begin to see, I'm sorry, mm-hmm. it's off balance. It took quite a while for that to happen. What needs to be done so it gets a little bit more balanced?
Well, for one, we have to stop with the politicization of public education, for one. and that is something we talk about a lot in PTA, is that public education is not a for-profit entity. It is a public service that we give to our most vulnerable, to our most impressionable, to our future. It is an investment that we're making into our state and country's future. And I think let's stop there. And let's also start having the conversation about what is best for children. That's two. And thirdly, we have to make sure we're actually speaking to everyone. We have to be speaking with everyone, which is why it's very important that we make sure that our public schools are governed locally by an elected body, elected by the taxpayers and voters of that respective county, because those are the ones who can be held most accountable for the educational outcomes of our public schools. And we got to make sure that we are not siphoning away their powers, their ability. We can't be legislating just from Tallahassee. We have to allow for the innovation and the investment in our schools to happen locally. And when things are not going well, I can assure you, the public will respond and will show up, because it's a lot easier for many of our members to show up to a school board meeting than it is to drive to Tallahassee for a committee meeting that might get canceled at the last minute. But it's harder to do so at a publicly noticed school board meeting that is held monthly, where we can address the issues of most important to us as it relates to the public education system.
We know local is important because people, when they move to Miami, within Miami, they decide, I want to move over to Doral, or I want to Coral Gables, or in Kendall, or wherever it is. And even within that community, there's different places. Think about the city of Miami. You can do the Coconut Grove, or you can do downtown, or wherever you want to live. So we understand that it's important that government is local, and the more local it is, the happier the people are, because they want to go down and look at them face to face, all right, and have that conversation with the supervisor, all right, superintendent, and the representatives and folks like you. So why would a local parent want to be in contact with the Florida PTA?
Well, we are at the cusp of trying to understand what is the new reality of public education and making sure that it is what's best. And we want every perspective at the table, because we know we don't have all the solutions, but we are definitely willing to sit and have the necessary conversations to bring about the best possible solutions and products for our public schools. So we want and invite all perspectives to the table. We are democratic process. We have position statements, we debate it, we amend it, just as you would expect in any ordinary society, to have a civil conversation. And we do what's best in majority rules, and we go about and make sure that we do what is necessary for our children. And that is who we want.
Jude, I'm sure there are people that have helped you along your way. And some of those people may have passed, or maybe they haven't. Can we put the camera on them? Why don't you talk to them right now? And mention by name if you like. All right, it's all you right at that camera. Right?
Sure. I have to give credit to, of course, my father, who, like many parents, had to make tough decisions as a child, raising me as a single father, and then of getting the resources of my family and stepmother. I have to thank the public school system, particularly those, whether they're law enforcement officers, Memorial High School, or anywhere else at David Lawrence or Hubert Sibley. I am who I am today because of their patience, their understanding, and their ability to invest their time, talents, and treasures in me. And I thank each and every single one of you. But Almighty, I have to thank our Heavenly Father for His grace, because as I tell people, I'm still a work in progress by the Lord, making sure that I do follow that guidance. But honestly, I can comfortably say, with the family I have and the school systems I've been able to attend, I would not be who I am today. I eventually wanted to be a police officer, President of the United States, but what has remained constant has been the support of our public school system, and that is why I want to make sure we do what's best for it.
Jude Bruno, we are lucky to have you representing us in Tallahassee and throughout the state.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for doing that. If somebody needs to get a hold of you, how can they find you?
They can email me at pe@floridapta.org. That is pe@floridapta.org.
Let's look in the camera right over here. And, okay, that camera right there. And thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely.
And folks, my brother Grant and I subscribe to the Disney rule, which is when you hug someone, don't stop until they do. Have a great day.